Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host for today's broadcast, Insane Leader 13, and we are preparing to get underway here for the first race of X League's GT3 Pro season. It will be season 4 for X League to do their series. Let's real quickly go ahead and look at some of the drivers who will be here for tonight's event. CLN Clinical will be swapping into one of the Porsche machines. Cars Matthews will be in the number 91 Ford. FZ Mini Aero will be in the number 41 Rolex Ferrari. TCPP Photo will be in the 43 BMW M6. Agent Diesel will be in the number 88 Aston Martin Vantage. 6647 will be in the 75 Porsche. Capsule Healer is slotting into the Ferrari. Dex Twilight is jumping into the number 44 Aston Martin. Arrow 592 is back in the Porsche. Les Railgun is in the 67 Ford GT. Remember, Les Railgun is the defending GT3 Drivers Champion, and the Ford team is the team that won the championship last season. Dex Kalula is jumping into the other Aston Martin Vantage. Lil Kid Suave, the Porsche Cup champion from last season, is in the BMW team. Duria Boy is in one of the Dodges. I believe they're just in a one-off. Keep an eye on them. They may end up being involved in some instance later today. Topic Vendor is in another one of the Dodges. Manuel Pedro is in the Ferrari team. Indiel Shadow is in the highest qualified Dodge. Wiza is in the number 24 BMW M6. Yokomuku is one of the drivers in the Chevy. Today, Tempered Ship is jumping into number 21 Ford GT. It's Maze is jumping into the Chevy. Remember, he came home second in driver's points last season, looking to one-up that. And that will be your rundown for tonight's event. We're going to try and take a Twitch mandated ad break here, and when we come back, we're hoping that we will see the field loading onto the circuit for today's race. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Hockenheim, as the grid has already been ordered and we are now loading onto the circuit proper here. The plan is to hopefully get about halfway through the event before we have to run any Twitch mandated ad breaks. It's going to be a large field. Last night, if you joined us for the Porsche Cup race, we saw it was a very, very small field, only 8 cars. Still some interesting strategy shenanigans that played out there. Most notably, It's Maze misqualifying and practice last night to win that Porsche Cup race pretty handily. He actually attempted qualifying in this event, is going to be starting up near the front, so keep an eye on Mays because he has a little bit more strategy familiarity than everyone else here. The other thing to remember is that the Porsche Cup cars are a little bit slower on the lap, or a little bit slower over the course of the lap compared to the GT3 Pro cars. That means that tire life may play out just a little bit differently in tonight's race, but we saw last night the medium tires could really go about 12 laps, but if you really were happy, you could stretch them out to 14 laps. The soft tires could go about 7 to 9 laps. We're expecting relatively similar numbers today. Once again, we want to give a quick shout out of thanks to XR Monaco for performing safety car duties for tonight. We're looking at a 20-car field for the event today. Dex Twilight has put the Aston Martin on pole, with Indy El Shadow putting the Dodge Viper on outside pole. Then it will be It's Maze and Dex Kalula, followed by Les Railgun and Topik Vendor. Then you'll have Tempered Ship and Manuel Pedro, who's coming back. We saw Pedro last season like to get onto alternate strategies quite a bit. Then you'll have Wiza 4 and Little Kid Suave, followed by Yokomuku and TCPP Photo. After that will be AFZ Mini Arrow and 6647. Afterwards, you'll have Arrow 592 and Capsule Hero 59. Capsule Hero is a newcomer to the series. I'll be really curious to see what they can do. After that will be Agent Diesel and Daria Boy. Daria Boy had some issues, just not very happy with the car in qualifying, about 6 seconds off the next slowest car, so it's going to be a rough time for him. And then Cars Matthew and CLN Clinical both missed qualifying. They'll be starting at the rear of the grid for tonight's race in the Ford GT and the Porsche, respectively. And that makes up your 20-car grid for tonight's race. So a field twice as large as what we saw in the Porsche Cup event. It's not something we normally see. Normally, you see similar numbers between the Porsche Cup races and the GT3 Pro races, but now with such a larger field here in GT3 Pro, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. Typically, these larger fields in the GT3 category means we have yellow flags. Yellow flags usually means that the tire strategies get thrown completely all sorts of out of whack. A lot of drivers say, oh no, the tire strategy in Forza is very easy to manipulate. And yes, if your race goes green flag to flag, it is very easy to manipulate. But various different series have different rules under yellow flags, and if you get yellow flags and how they play out, that can really shake up and alter strategy. So keep an eye on that. We'll start seeing the field doubling up here as they come down to the last two corners. There we are. It's only going to be probably the first 3 or 4 rows that get properly doubled up. So not a great start by the rear of the grid, but our front 4 rows are doubled up. That's what matters the most. Green flag, and we are underway here at Hockenheim. And immediately, Dex Twilight is trying to go side by side with Indy El Shadow into the corners. A little bit of contact, a bit of sideways there from Twilight. And now Twilight spins, and Twilight, your defending series champion, starts his defense out with a spin. Lap 1, turn 1 at Hockenheim. Topik Vendor out of nowhere has moved up into second position. And number 14, Horizon Dodge. They're now looking at Indy El Shadow farther up the road. Maze is already up in the 3rd position here in that Chevy bus, under threat from Dex Kalula. Les Railgun is back there in 5th. I said Twilight was the defending champion. I'm wrong. It's Railgun who's the defending champion. But Railgun didn't have a great start either. He has already slipped back to the 5th position now, with Wiza now just behind him. And look at that, they're trying to go 3 and 4 and 5 wide. There are 4 wide with 6 cars under a blanket. Somehow everyone is pointing the right way at the head of the field, but there's a little bit more chaos further back. Dario Boy gets out of it, Cars Matthews gets out of it. I think everyone got out of it without taking any serious damage, but chaos already reigning up and down the field early on here. Topik Vendor holding on to his position in 2nd right now. Dex Kalula is 3rd. Maze is 4th, but Shadow has opened up a pretty healthy lead very early on right now. Ticker is improperly showing Les Railgun as being 3 minutes, nearly 3 minutes behind the leader. We're expecting that to properly adjust itself once they come by the start-finish line here. Manuel Pedro up into 8th position behind Tempered Ship. Tempered Ship was one of the other drivers who was in last night's race, was in contention for a top result in the Porsche Cup race, but the massive amount of time penalties he earned knocked him out of podium positions. But he does have some familiarity with what to expect. AFZ Mini Arrow is pitting here on lap 1, so he may have taken some damage in the instance that happened on lap 1 in the hairpin there. Pedro's still stuck there behind Tempered Ship right now. Here it comes. Pedro to the inside, Tempered Ship, side by side, Ford versus Ferrari into turn number 2. Ferrari has the inside line, hits the curbs. That really upsets the traction of the cars, but he is by, and it looks like Arrow is going to try and follow suit. but is trapped on the outside. There's not much room out there. Drops his tires to the dirt ever so briefly. Still has the draft off to the Ford, but here comes Lil Kid Suave in the BMW. Suave working his way on what will be the inside, coming down into the hairpin. Side by side, neck and neck. The BMW is going to pull up alongside the Ford GT, and the Porsche gets hit from behind by one of the Chevrolets. I believe that was Yokomuku. And Aero 592 is going to barely end up 3 wide. Now as they come to the next course, someone has to back out. You don't want to be 3 wide in here. But around the outside, Aero wraps it around and holds station over those cars. So Aero, for the moment, holds a top 10 result. Topik Vendor is now slipped back to the 5th position in that Dodge. So Dex Kalula is up into 2nd now. Les Railgun is starting to stabilize. He's back in 3rd. But Indy El Shadow has pulled out a 2-second gap right now. Avoided chaos in lap 1, turn 1, and has opened up a respectable lead early on. But now the question is anyone fast enough or clever enough on strategy to catch him as this race tonight plays out? Dex Kalula leads Les Railgun, then it's Maze. We have 4 different manufacturers here in the top 4 positions, with a Dodge leading early on. Big twitch there by Kalula coming out of the final corner. Here comes Les Railgun. The Ford GT has a fantastic run coming down to turn 1. Now, turn 1 is not really an ideal overtaking zone just because of how aggressive the curbs are on the inside and outside. But if you can nail your run through turn 1, you can get a fantastic draft, a fantastic shot at a dive bomb going into turn number 2. It looks like Maze wants to try and do that to Les Railgun. Can't do it yet. These two, Railgun and Maze, were 1 and 2 in the championship last season at the end of the year. They were the head drivers in their respective teams. Now, once again, they're fighting each other, and they're on the same teams as they were last year as well. Here comes a move very late by Maze to the inside of Railgun. Railgun jumps into the dirt to try and cross him over, and while both of them don't make any contact with each other, neither of them really have a good time on exit, and Railgun is immediately under threat from the Dodge of Topik Vendor. That is the first repeat manufacturer. Topik Vendor's Dodge is the same Dodge, the same team as what Indy El Shadow is leading with right now. And now that Maze and Railgun have got into it with each other a bit, Dex Kalula can try and focus forward a bit and try to run down on Indy El Shadow at the head of the field. All right, well, we're about almost three complete racing laps in, and Indy El Shadow drops the tire into the dirt. That's not going to be good. But let's take a look at everyone's fuel and tire numbers right now in the early stages of this race. 18% wear there for Indy El Shadow. For Dex Kalula, just a little bit behind. He is at 18% wear. For Maze, who runs in 3rd, he is at 17% wear. So the Chevy's having a little bit better tire management maybe this season. Les Railgun is at 16% wear. Topik Vendor, who runs in 5th in the Dodge, is at 18% wear. Wiza in the BMW is at 17% wear. Manuel Pedro in the highest Ferrari right now is at 18% wear. How far down till we see someone on an alternate tire strategy? Tempered Chip, 18% wear. Aero in the Porsche is at 30% wear. So he is the first driver on the soft tire compounds. So your top 8 are all on mediums. Aero is the first driver on the softer tire compound in this race. And don't look now, but both Dex Kalula and Maze are starting to close down on Indy El Shadow. Shadow seems to be showing a little bit of weakness. He opened up that 2-second gap early on, but now as the rhythm of the race is starting to play out, Dex Kalula is running him down. And someone else who is worth keeping an eye on is going to be Dex Twilight. Remember, lap 1, turn 1, got into it with another driver and spun completely off track, went to last place. He's already cracked the top 10 now, dives to the inside of Aero 592 and clears the Porsche. Now, Porsche is going to get the crossover on corner X, a little bit of door-to-door contact here before they come into the first half of the drag strip section. Runs the Porsche a little bit wide, but then gives him enough room to come back onto the circuit. Side by side. Last 2 possible overtaking spots on the circuit here, and he'll clear the Porsche, and Aero falls behind Agent Diesel in the process. Now, Diesel is Dex Twilight's teammate, but I do have a feeling that between them, they know that Twilight is by far the faster driver. He's not really going to fight with Twilight for this. And down through the final 2 corners. So yeah, Dex Twilight has gone from 20th last up to 9th in just a span of 6 laps, or technically 6 laps minus a corner. Qualified 2nd, fell to last, already back up to 9th. The good news for Dex Twilight is that as he continues to move up the grid, he will have fewer and fewer cars to pass, and more time in clean air. The bad news is that every car will have to pass will be harder, and Kalula has slid off the circuit. Kalula and Mays both caught Shadow at the same time, but Kalula in the heat of battle slid off circuit, dropped tires off, falls to third, and here comes Mays. Mays trying to be one of only a handful of drivers to lead in both events in the X League weekend, both the Porsche Cup and GT3 Pro races. He's got to the inside of NDL Shadow, puts the power down, big twitch back there from from Kalula, and it looks like Kalula, despite being pushed all over the place, is going to be able to keep it on track, but just barely, and now he slides off again, and Kalula is going to fall down to about 4th position, might even lose that to Topik Vendor. Kalula was fantastic when he was leading that train, but the moment came that he had to start attacking, it seems like the pressure has gotten to him, and he is struggling to just maintain top 5 pace right now. Side by side with that Dodge again, the Dodge goes in deep, and Kalula goes into the dirt, and that's another Aston Martin that has gone off into the dirt. That's 2 Aston Martins today that got into the dirt. He nearly comes onto the track right in front of his teammate Twilight, and slides into the dirt again, and he does hit his other teammate, Agent Diesel. Aston Martin's team cannot figure out a good, competent way to start today's season, to start today's race. They are all over each other in the worst ways possible. And Dex Kalula goes from being from 2nd to 10th and might even fall out of the top 10. He does! He gets him checked there by Lil Kid Swag, drops into the dirt again. He goes from 2nd to out of the top 10 in about a lap's time. And at the front, it is Shadow versus Mays. And Mays has gotten back by Shadow here, and there's Les Railgun. Look at this, 3 American manufacturers, Dodge, Chevrolet, and Ford, all at the head of the field right now. Topik Vendor in 4th is in another American manufacturer in Dodge. It may be a German race tech, but tonight it seems like American hardware is reigning supreme in the daylight hours. Coming down now into the hairpin. Railgun trying to work it around the outside. Mays on the inside has a little bit of trouble putting the power down, so the Ford GT is still on his outside as he'll come to this high-speed right-hand bend here. The Ford should have enough downforce to stick it there and then go deep into the following braking zone. And now Mays goes back in front of, Railgun goes back in front of Mays. But at the line, Mays did lead, so Mays has achieved his goal of leading a lap in both the Porsche Cup and the GT3 Cup events in the same weekend. A very, very rare thing to have happen in X League. NDL Shadow has actually ended up back into the lead, but Shadow has been caught once, and now he is being caught again by Les Railgun, your defending series champion. Shadow was in the championship fight last season until he missed several races late in the season. Now, he wasn't leading the championship, but he was within easy striking distance, and there's definitely was questions of, well, if Shadow actually showed up to the rest of the season, could he have made some sort of run for the championship against Railgun? Well, it's only the first race of this season, but I'm sure that those questions might be able to get silenced now. It's going to depend on how good of a defense can Shadow put up on Railgun. These two cars, these two drivers are running very similar tire strategies, so we anticipate that they would both have to pit at roughly the same time in tonight's race. Dex Twilight has moved up into the 7th position right now. He is within 4 seconds of the leaders. And with how much battling we are seeing at the front, I think Dex Twilight might still be in talks for a podium. I don't know about a win, but I think a podium may still be possible. Shadow completely botches the entry into the hairpin, but turns that around and has a really good exit and has a fantastic run coming out of the hairpin, puts the car right back in front of Railgun, does not let Railgun get alongside here. So Railgun can't go for the dive here that he did on Mays a lap earlier. But there's the run. Railgun, fantastic traction on exit. Hits the Dodge in the rear bumper. Dodge slides wide, but not off circuit. Railgun's still there. Mays is just hanging behind him in 3rd, just outside draft range right now. Now through the stadium section once again. And it looks like we have lost our first driver tonight. That is Daria Boy. Through the final 2 corners again, Mays still within 9/10 of the leader. Dex Twilight has now moved up into 5th position. He can now see the top 4 ahead of him. So Twilight recovering from a lap 1 spin. Arrow pitting on lap 8. So he went 7 laps plus 1 pace lap on soft tires. So we're anticipating the mediums can go about 10 to 12 laps, maybe a little bit longer depending on how deep you want to push them. And the medium tires seem to be the strategy that most of the field is on. Shadow, once again, good run coming onto the hairpin. Well, not onto the hairpin, but onto the main back straightaway coming down to the hairpin. And Les Railgun under threat from It's Maze now. Topic Vendor back there is going to have to try and hold off Dex Twilight. That's not much of a hold off. It looks like Twilight's already gotten to the inside of the Dodge. He's going to back out. Doesn't want to be side by side in this high-speed right-hander here. But Twilight is on an incredible comeback drive. The comeback story of the night, potentially. From spinning lap 1 to already back in the top 5 before lap 9 is even over. And if this is what Dex Twilight can do tonight, I would be scared as to what Twilight could do over the course of a race where he doesn't end up in any incidents. Oh, and there's side-by-side through the same section. You don't want to do that. Side-by-side between Railgun and Shadow, and Railgun muscles his way through. He goes up. Railgun is up. Shadow is up. They're both deep into the dirt. They're sliding way offline, and they nearly hit 4th and 5th places. They come back on the circuit, and a Ferrari, Emmanuel Pedro, hits the Dodge from behind, and now Pedro's under threat from Wiza. Is there damage on the Dodge? On the Ferrari? There's no damage on the Ferrari. They'll keep going, but all of a sudden, Maze goes to the lead again. The top 2 went side-by-side in the stadium section and immediately found out why you never, ever want to go side-by-side the same section, as they both went off circuit, lost huge chunks of time, coming onto the track at an awful angle. And now, all of a sudden, Dex Twilight picks up 2 more free positions off of someone else's bad fortune. Twilight, in just 9 racing laps, has gone from 2nd to last to 3rd. And there is not over yet. He is right here behind Topic Vendor. Les Railgun has rebounded into 4th. Indiel Shadow has stabilized in 5th. But now Shadow is 3.5 seconds out of the lead, and Railgun is 2 seconds out. Dex Twilight to the inside of Topic Vendor as they come out of the hairpin to this high-speed right-hand bend. The Aston should have the lane of choice. And he does, and he completes the overtakes. Dex Twilight is right back to where he qualified. We could see him legitimately go from 2nd to last to the lead in a span of 10 racing laps, something that is basically unheard of in competitive GT3 racing. And yes, he would have had some help from the top 2 drivers in this race spinning themselves out in the stadium section, but that is still unheard of by Dex Twilight. He could be on for a miracle comeback show to start off the season. Twilight right there behind the Chevrolet of Maze. Maze won last night, but was off the back of strategy. Didn't really have to do a lot of fighting on track after the first few laps, and he dropped the tire in the dirt, killed his momentum, and look at that. At the very end of the 9th racing lap, it was Dex Twilight in the lead. So Dex Twilight goes from 2nd to last to the 1st in exactly the span of 9 racing laps tonight. I cannot believe what I'm seeing from this man right now. He still has a little bit of fuel in the car, still has a little bit of life left in the tires as well. So Dex Twilight could probably stay out here to the end of lap 12 or lap 13. He's on the same strategy as everyone else, but has flown through the entire field, gone to the lead. I think Dex Twilight is going to walk off here with not just a win, but one of those rare, treasured spin and win events. Yes, Maze is still there. Yes, Topic Vendor is still there, but there is nothing I've seen from those 2 drivers that suggests to me that they have anything for Dex Twilight right now. And as this has gone on, Les Railgun still holds out about 2 seconds out of the lead. Indiel Shadow right about 3.3 seconds out of the lead. Manuel Pedro, after all that chaos, is back here in 6th position, just about 6.5 seconds out of the lead, with Tempered Chip in the Ford GT just behind him right now. Savage and AFZ Miniero are making their first pit stops right now as well. And it looks like CLN Clinical is going to be going a lap down momentarily here. He is about to pit. Yeah, CLN Clinical is pitting. I'm not sure what the he's pitting for more new tires, it looks like. Huh, had a lot of fuel in the tank still. But he is paying for tires. So CLN Clinical is going to be the first driver to go a lap down in tonight's race. Dex Twilight has already pulled a 2.5 seconds in a single lap over Maze. And Maze is now fighting with Topic Vendor. Les Railgun is closing in on this fight for 2nd. But I cannot believe what I've seen from Dex Twilight here. Again, the ticker says that Dex Twilight has only gained 1 spot from the start, but that's emphatically not true. I mean, it is technically true from the technical start of the race. He's gained 1 spot from... Oh, wait, no, that means that Twilight... Because it says Monaco usually is pole setter. So I was wrong. Dex Twilight didn't start first. Didn't start second. He started first. So Twilight went from pole to spinning out to first in the span of 9 racing laps. I thought it was second, but no, he went from pole to last to first, all in the span of 9 laps. Incredible. The driver with the most positions gained from the start right now is Cars Matthew. He is up 8. You have to remove 1 from every single spot on that grid because, remember, XR Monaco, who is the series host, puts himself at the start as pace car at the beginning of each event. So, like, CL and Clinical technically only up 1 position. TCPP Photo technically down a position. Tempered Chip technically down a position. Dex Kula technically hasn't changed at all. So, yeah, Dex Twilight right back where he started, and he is pitting at the end of lap 12. So, he's only gone 11 laps plus 1 pace lap here on the medium tires. Topik Vendor is joining him in pits. NDL Shadow is joining him in pits. Dex Kalula is joining him in pits. So, this turns the lead of the race back over to the Chevrolet of Mays, with Les Railgun just a little bit behind. So this is a 36-lap race. If you can go 12 laps on the mediums, it makes an easy strategy call. You want to go ahead and pit on at the end of lap 12, at the end of lap 24, and you're good to the end. Now, if you want to, you could try and go 1 extra lap on the mediums now, struggle with rougher tire life now to have slightly better tire life in one of your later stints, potentially, where you only have to run 11 laps instead of 12. But I don't know how much of a massive advantage it's going to give you. I'm looking at Les Railgun right now. He's at 54% right now. So he is losing time, but not an absurdly high amount of time. Tire fall doesn't really kick in to be a problem in these cars until around 62%. So Dex Twilight falls out of the lead again, but this time it is off strategy. But still, in 12 laps, on the same tires as everyone else, he went from, 9 laps, technically, on the same tires as just about everyone else, he went from last to first. I am curious what Les Railgun can do, though. Now that he's back behind Mays, and Railgun was right there fighting with NDL Shadow. And now the question is, well, can Railgun get into some clean air and try to turn laps in clean air to try and fight back against Dex Twilight? It looks like both Mays and Railgun are going to stay out a little bit longer. So we saw in last night's race, so Manuel Pedro's paying out third, but we saw in last night's race, the strategy that Mays ran was medium, medium, soft. So he ran long on the medium tires, dealt with some bad tire fall off late in his stints to have some incredible lap times later on the soft tires, won by, I think it was like 21 seconds last night. Now, granted, the field quality was a little bit more all over the place and a little bit more spread out last night. And there were only 8 cars in last night's race. There are 20 in tonight's race. But could Mays be onto something by spending all these extra laps out here in cleaner air? Him and Railgun, they could end up in cleaner air when they complete their stops. Might not end up fighting with a bunch of other drivers on track right away. Here comes a move to the outside by Railgun on Mays. Nothing yet by that duo. If you want to go the last 8 laps on a set of softs, then you need to make the mediums go about 14 to 15 laps, ideally. Those tires are at 63% right now, but I think there's enough fuel in Mays' car that he could go 1 more lap if he so desires. And the sun is starting to set here at Hockenheim once again. Chevy very nearly gets into the dirt, and here comes Railgun on the outside. Railgun did not learn his lesson earlier. He is still trying to go side by side in the stadium section. Under no circumstances in any car do you want to be side by side in the stadium section, but Railgun seems to be willing to hustle the point. And Mays did not have a good entry into the pit, so Railgun might have clipped him coming into the pits here. Wiza paying out 3rd place. Lil Kid Suave pitting out 4th. Tempered Ship is 5th right now. Is he going to inherit the lead, or is he going to jump into the pits as well? No, he is jumping into the pits as well, so will TCPP Photo. So that will give the lead back over to Dex Twilight here. He has gone up and down the field, well, up and down the field once, and then halfway down and back up the field twice in just the first half of this race alone. Now, Twilight is on the more traditional conservative strategy, all medium tires all the way through. Maze and Railgun, though, they are going to be on a strategy that's a little bit more aggressive on the mediums early, but will put them on the soft tires later in the event. Will that give them anything against Dex Twilight later in the run tonight? At this stage, everyone on track has now made at least their first stop of what we anticipate is roughly a two-stop race for the vast majority of the field tonight. And look at this, Toe Pick Vendor right in the middle of this fight all over again, and Dex Twilight has scooted off into the lead. Now, Toe Pick Vendor's already bound these tires for a few laps, but he only has really until this hairpin corner. After the hairpin corner, the Chevy and the Ford will have tires warmed up, and the Chevy of Maze completely botched the braking zone, has an awful run out, and Maze falls back to the 5th position behind Shadow and Railgun. Oh, that wasn't Toe Pick Vendor, that is Shadow. So Shadow is right back here with Railgun and can start his fight again. Now, if these two are going to fight again, can they not send themselves out into the dirt in the stadium section again? As the sun has now officially set and the headlights have turned on all the cars on the field. And Dex Twilight now has an 8-second lead over this group. I don't think it matters. I think that while some of these drivers, Railgun and Maze, are on a more aggressive strategy, they do not have the sheer level of pace that Dex Twilight has. So barring a late race yellow, I think Twilight is going to zoom off into the distance with a very, very easy win here. And you wonder, if Dex Twilight didn't spin out lap 1, turn 1, if he didn't get turned lap 1, turn 1, what in the devil could Twilight have done today? How many cars would he have had the ability to put down a lap in today's race? DL Shadow closing in on Les Railgun, looks to the inside, side by side, Dodge versus Ford again. As they power out of turn 2, still side by side, Ford slides a little bit, the Dodge still on the outside, and it looks like that is Shadow who move into the 3rd position, with Railgun now in his draft as they come down into the hairpin corner again. And if these drivers keep fighting the way they have been, Toe Pick Vendor may be in position to walk out here with a silently understated podium result, which would be absolutely incredible. Coming down to the first half of the drag strip section once again. And you have this 90-degree right-hander. Was closer to an 80-degree than 90-degree. Oh, and that was another drop into the dirt there by Railgun. So while Railgun is really being aggressive and willing to put his cars in places where it shouldn't be, he also may just be pushing that Ford GT a little bit too aggressively right now. Although a Shadow sliding wide there in the drag strip section, the second half of the drag strip section, that's not going to help him. He's sideways, and here comes the Ford to the inside. Doesn't have the momentum, though. Has to settle for 4th position for just a little bit longer. And now coming down to turn number 2. Oh, what in the... Man, Railgun didn't even try to make the braking zone. He just went deep and ran right into the Dodge's rear bumper. Maze hangs out in 5th right now, but does not seem to have what it takes to fight these two at the moment. And then a little bit farther back is Dex Kalula, who is in the next highest Aston Martin right now. Again, no big moves, no big dives in the hairpin corner that time either. But now they come down through this middle section of the circuit again. A fair balance between speed and technicality through Sector 2. And then Sector 3, which is basically exclusively the stadium section, you don't want to be side by side in under any circumstances. Well, I'm sure that both Railgun and Shadow are going to be having some internal cope where they'll be like, if we didn't go off into the dirt, if the other driver didn't try pushing it side by side, the stadium section, we would have won this race. But the sheer pace difference, I think Dex Twilight would have caught these two and passed them by this stage of the race already. Twilight holds a 10-second gap over Railgun and Shadow, a 7-second gap over Topic Vendor right now. If Shadow and Railgun can keep their metaphorical bratwurst out of their metaphorical genes, they might still be able to run down Topic Vendor and try to snipe the second step on the podium from him. But there is no catching Dex Twilight in tonight's race by the looks of it. He is in a zone of his own today. Cars Matthews is another driver to watch. He missed qualifying, started next to last. He is already in the top 10, ranked in 8th position in the Ford GT. We saw last year Cars Matthews very, very confident in the Ferraris. Now he's in the Ford, which is a little bit more stable platform, obviously. Coming from 20th to 8th, well, technically 19th to 8th. No, it was 20th to 8th right now, is a pretty solid drive by Matthews. Yeah, it's no Dex Twilight, but it's still a fantastic run on his part tonight. And then once more, I want to talk about Mays. Mays won last night's race, and then he's also led laps into tonight's race as well. One of the very rare drivers to lead laps in both the Porsche Cup event and the GT3 event in the same weekend here in the X League. So as we are crossing our way past the race's halfway point and everything's settled down a bit, we're going to spin the lap on board with the Chevrolet of Vince Mays around Hockenheim. We'll be back shortly here at Germany's premier racing circuit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to Hockenheim Range. We're watching 2nd through about 7th fly through turn 1. And now that is your leader right there, Dex Twilight. And then you'll see 2nd through about 7th, all coming down shortly afterwards. That is the Porsche of CLN Clinical, who has pulled off circuit there, letting the lead field go by. And we want to say thank you to him for being willing to do that. But man, Dex Twilight, he holds a 9-second lead right now. You would think, oh, that's the Pulsar. He's leading by a massive amount. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who missed the first third of tonight's race, Dex Twilight started on pole, was spun out lap 1, turn 1, fell to dead last on the circuit, and has since just retaken the lead in just 9 laps, from last to first in 9 laps, and has just quietly walked away from everyone else. The fight is going to be for second on back. NDL Shadow does look like he has a shot. Again at Topic Vendor by the end of this race. Reminder, though, that two of the drivers in this 6-car fight from 2nd to 7th. They are on an alternate strategy. They are running long on the medium tires right now to try and jump onto the soft tires in the very ending sprint of this race. We've also apparently lost AFZ Mini Aero. We'll try to reach out to Mini Aero and see if they have anything they want to say, as they are our second retirement from tonight's event. And despite a lot of chaos, a lot of wildness going on, including our pole sitter spinning out of the lead, lap 1, turn 1, and then our top two taking each other off track in a big way, the stadium section, back around lap 8. We have had quite a few incidents, but nothing to warrant a yellow flag. We have been clean and green all night tonight. Indy El Shadow runs in 3rd. Les Railgun, your defending series champion, is 4th. Mays, who came home 2nd in last year's championship, runs in 5th. Dex Klula is 6th, and Manuel Pedro holds on in 7th. And it is a big gap from Manuel Pedro back to the next highest driver, and that is Carr Matthews. And remember, Carr Matthews might honestly be in a position where he should be in that lead group. We have lost Topik Vinder. No, our second highest driver, Topik Vinder, who is on track for an easy podium, has suddenly dropped out of the event just a little bit before the 2/3 mark. All of a sudden, Indy El Shadow moves into 2nd position. This now becomes a fight for 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. But Topik Vinder suddenly drops out of the race completely unexpectedly on the 20th racing lap. Well, whatever little bit of pressure Dex Twilight may have been under is gone, and by the same margin, Indy El Shadow is now no longer pressing ahead to try and get 2nd place. He knows that there's no way he catches Twilight. I think Shadow is now just trying to stabilize for a 2nd place result to restart this new season here. And Les Railgun, your defending series champion, on track for a podium here. But when you have made no mistakes and a podium is all you can pull out against two different drivers who have spent huge portions of time off circuit, for Les Railgun, he's going to be livid. We saw last season the BOP generally favored the Ford GT. It wasn't always the case, but it did seem like it generally favored the Ford GT. There has been changes to the balancing of the tunes this season. You have to wonder if Les Railgun behind the scenes is going to be like, well, if I had the same car, if the cars were balanced the way they were last season, I could have done better. But it is only race 1, and it's hard to tell if Dex Twilight actually has a BOP that's really busted in the favor of the Aston, or if he's just that good. Because the thing is, he is not the only driver in the Aston. We have Dex Klula here, who has now gained a huge dive bomb from Manuel Pedro, and Pedro hits Mays in the process. Manuel Pedro went for an impossible dive bomb going into the hairpin, and spins out Mays in the process, and Dex Kalula, despite being knocked off circuit, actually ends up gaining a position in that entire affair. Ha! No yellow flag, and they'll all be able to continue, but Mays is going to be absolutely infuriated at Manuel Pedro. Holding down just about neck and neck between this duo of Mays and Pedro now. This has now become a fight for 4th and 5th, because they have, well, 5th and 6th, because they have lost Dex Kalula, they've lost Shadow and Railgun. Shadow's actually gotten by Railgun. I missed this. No, I've not missed it. This is the same they've been for the last little bit. Yeah, just a stalking battle between these two, but they are on slightly alternative strategies. Same with this duo, Mays and Pedro. They are on slightly alternative strategies as well. So Cars Matthews technically has gone from 20th to 7th. Now, 3 of those positions now have been handed to him by off the back of disconnects. But Cars Matthews still 11 seconds out of this group, but if Mays and Pedro get into it again with each other, he could still crack a top 5 result, which would be an incredible run by Matthews. Yeah, it's no Dex Twilight, but it would still be incredibly impressive. So the next driver at risk of going a lap down will be Capsule Healer and Savage back here in 15th and 16th. And I must apologize, I bit the ever-living crap out of my lip last Friday. Not yesterday Friday, last Friday. The first few days it didn't feel that bad, but as it has been, my body has been scarring it over, it is right on top of a nerve. So every time I'm talking, I'm dealing with some moderately significant pain, and it is making talking and enunciating my words properly a little bit difficult for tonight's race. I do apologize for that. It looks like Manuel Pedro has gotten by Mays here. So as these two fight, they're going to drag each other backwards away from Kalula and giving Cars Matthews more and more of a shot at this as this goes on. A reminder, Mays is on a strategy, medium, medium, soft. He is going to be going very long on his tires. He's at 43% right now. Manuel Pedro, on the other hoof, is at 47%. So Pedro pitted, I guess, a lap earlier. But Pedro has the position now, but Mays is trying to go long on the tires now so he can throw on the softs later and run back up the field later in the event. But despite being dumped and spun out by the Ferrari earlier, it does not look like Mays is really pushing the issue and really trying to hustle against that Ferrari right now. This is the stalking battle for second and third. Railgun has ran behind Shadow for the last few laps. So looking at the tire differences, Railgun 43% on his tires right now. That was not who I wanted to look at. It's Shadow who's who I wanted to look at. Shadow on the other hoof is at 56%, and almost out of fuel. So Shadow will be pitting at the end of this lap, and Railgun will stay out a little longer. Dex Twilight also jumping into the pits as well. And Shadow is really trying to go. Shadow will not learn from his earlier lesson. He is trying to go side by side with that Dodge again in the stadium section. And now here it comes. Shadow finally comes in the pits, as will Dex Kalula. So this should give the lead to Les Railgun here for a little bit. On an alternate strategy, Les Railgun is hoping that jumping onto the soft tires late in the event will let him clip Shadow for second. But Manuel Pedro stays out a little bit longer, so he now moves to second. Mays moves to third, as we are in the middle of our second round of stops. Should be the final round of stops for just about the entire field here. Now, real quick, let's go ahead and look at the time penalties at this stage of the race. How does this change things? Well, for one, Manuel Pedro, 8.2 seconds of time penalties. That's going to be a killer. Dex Kalula, though, 12.5 seconds of time penalties. I believe once you hit 12.5 seconds on the Forza multiplayer online lobbies, 12.5 seconds, you automatically get disqualified from the event. So Kalula, while he's had some decent pace and has been running top 6 most of the day, has not been doing a good job respecting track limits. Dex Twilight, 2.5 seconds of penalties, but that's kind of acceptable considering the ridiculous run he's had from back to front and the massive gap he has pulled in the field. Mays, 4.6 seconds. So yes, Pedro has a position on Mays right now, but Mays knows that when it comes down to time penalty, he'll get that spot back. Lil Kid Suave, only 1.1 seconds of time penalties, way better than what he was doing last night in the Porsche Cup race. Indiel Shadow, 6.7 seconds of time penalties. That's suboptimal, but not the worst thing ever. Looks like Pedro's only able to stay out one lap longer. So we look back at Dex Twilight. He sees Wiza just ahead, so this may be the first time in a little bit that Dex Twilight will have to deal with some traffic here. But that shouldn't matter too much as Pedro is in the pits. But yeah, that shouldn't matter too much. We saw Twilight cut his way through traffic with just about no issues in the earlier portions of this race. Seems like that will be the case again. He's already passed Wiza on track once. He's probably not worried about doing it again now, especially with Wiza being on worn-out tires at this stage of the event. Yokomuku also still in pit lane at the moment. A little bit curious to see where Car Matthews is going to end up after this round of stops. Again, there is a outside possibility that maybe Cars Matthew has something for the top 5 results. He only has 2.7 seconds of time penalties, so that would help a lot in that regard. Railgun leads a little bit longer over Mays. They have about 10 laps until they make their stop. That should put them on soft tires here. Manuel Pedro, after making his stop, he's in clean-ish air right now, but can look ahead and see a lot of drivers ahead. Photo, who is not on the same strategy, I'll have to pit soon. But then Kalula and Shadow just the road, and Pedro can really knuckle down and go hard for these next few laps. He could still catch those drivers ahead. Railgun and Mays have not yet made their stops, and it doesn't look like Wise is making his stop yet either. But again, we anticipate that Railgun and Mays will go to about lap 28. They'll pit at the end of lap 28. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wait. 9, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we anticipate that Railgun and Mays will pit at the end of lap 28 and throw on the soft tires for what will be roughly a 10-lap run on the softs. But their mediums are going to have some significant wear here. Right now, you can see he has to finish this lap and do one more lap. Railgun is currently at 55, 56% tire wear right now. And Mays in the Chevrolet is at 58% right now. So they'll likely be pitting sooner rather than later. And then the lead will go back to Dex Twilight, who has just worked his way by Liza 4. Twilight on track for an easy win as long as there's no disconnect or any issues like that. This is on board XR Monaco as he sees the lead field go by here. And as Les Railgun, he's only going 27 laps apparently. So Railgun is not willing to commit to 11 laps on the softs. He's going to go 10. He is pitting a little early anticipated, but Mays will stay out a bit longer though. So now deviation, that strategy between Railgun and Mays. But mind you, Railgun's kind of in a position that he just wants to solidify a podium result, but Mays got dumped by that Ferrari earlier and is still trying to stay ahead of him, so I'm not surprised that Mays is committing to an alternate strategy to try and do something against Manuel Pedro. So Mays leads now. Dex Twilight is second. Wiza is third. Railgun is going to end up in what should be about the 5th position or so. Now, it'll be a little worse than 5th by the looks of it. He's going to come out to about 6th right now. Just behind Shadow and Kalula here. Lil Kid Suave and Tempered Chip both went ahead and jumped into the pits this time by. But Mays, even though those Chevys are notorious for having awful pace on the big tire wear numbers, he is committing to this run. I'm very interested to see what he's going to do in the final sprint to the finish tonight. But this is now our fight here for what is currently 4th, 5th, and 6th on track. Now, they are going to pick up at least 2 positions when Wiza and Mays both make their stops. CL and Clinical has now gone 3 laps down at this stage of the event. So, Railgun jumping onto the mediums, we believe, for this 11-lap sprint to the end. Mays will, 9-lap sprint to the end. Mays, 8 laps on the softs. But he'll be at a track position disadvantage. I don't think he'll have anything for Railgun here. Oh, and Railgun's off into the dirt. That's suboptimal. As he watches Shadow and Kalula starting to scoot away in the distance. All right, we're going to take a Twitch-mandated ad break and spend a lap on board with Railgun. We'll be curious to see who he is fighting with when Mays and Wiza come out of the pits. We'll be back in about a minute and a half here at Hockenheim. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Hockenheim. There is a three-way fight here for what is currently second, third, and fourth on circuit, while Dex Twilight is sailing into an amazing lead, possibly a Forza career-defining win right now for him. The fight for second, third, and fourth is still just as hot as it has been most of the day today. And there goes fifth and sixth, and there's seventh. Well, fourth and fifth, and sixth and seventh is a little bit too farther back. I don't think Cars Matthew is going to have any serious shot at stealing a top 6 on pace today, but here you are. Here's your moves, and that is a push. The Ford pushes the Aston a little bit wide. Side by side on the run out of the hairpin. But it does look like Kalula holds on to second for now, but right now it's just a matter of Kalula trying to deny Railgun and Shadow as much as possible. But reminder, when it comes to time penalties, we look at that 13.4 seconds for Dex Kalula and 10.9 seconds for Manuel Pedro. In comparison, Shadow, while he does have a lot of penalties, it's only 9.3 seconds for him. Railgun with only 1.6 seconds. That seems absolutely paltry. So Railgun almost guaranteed to steal a second spot off of time penalties, but I think he wants to get by and not have to worry about fighting other drivers for this position, because Railgun's knack and reputation for fighting with other drivers today has been rough. He has been trying to fight and push the cars side by side in places you should not be side by side in. So Railgun, I think, knows that, and instead of, altering his aggression to match, he just wants to get to the front and go off into clean air so he doesn't have to worry about that. Also, a reminder, Railgun is going to have a very slight positive tire delta to the end of this race. But Dex Kalula, 13.4 seconds of penalty. Manuel Pedro with 10.9 seconds of penalty. Manuel Pedro almost certainly will lose 5th spot to Mays. If Car Matthews can find a little bit more time between now and the race end, Cars Matthew might also clip that spot from Pedro. Dex Kalula with 13.4 seconds. There is no way on earth he will have a third. He might still be able to take home a 5th, because Pedro probably isn't going to get him, I don't think. But Shadow will probably get him. Mays, it's hard to tell because Mays still has a respectable amount of penalties himself as well. Although right now it looks like Kalula is just starting to hemorrhage time right now. Side by side with the Aston. Dodge versus Aston here. And Kalula is back by. Here comes Shadow, looks to the inside, but there's just not enough speed. He has the traction, but not enough speed. If these two spend too much time flying, they will bring Shadow. I'm sorry, not Shadow. They will bring Manuel Pedro into the fray technically, but again, with the time penalties that Pedro has, it's not really going to matter. Shadow just needs to not earn any more time penalties and try to walk by Kalula as cleanly as possible, because Shadow's fight's going to be with Mays and staying far enough ahead of Mays to secure a podium over him. Car Matthews runs about 12 to 13 seconds out from the duo of Pedro and Mays. And again, we believe that Mays has thrown on soft tires on the run to the end right now, trying to use this alternate strategy to get back by Manuel Pedro, who's going to be on not excessively worn, but slightly more worn mediums to the end, we believe. And yeah, Railgun has jumped away from this duo of Shadow and Kalula. So late in this event, it seems like everything's kind of getting away from Kalula here a bit. And to a lesser extent, the same is true for Shadow, but I think Shadow should still be on track for an easy podium. 4 laps left in the event when they get to the start-finish line. Next driver at risk of going a lap down will be Savage, but after that will be Yoko Muku, and he is so far ahead of Savage, I wouldn't worry too much about it. So I think Savage will probably go a lap down before this is over, but that will likely be the last driver to go a lap down tonight. Shockingly, it has been green flag to flag tonight. Now with how spread out the field has been, which is not very, honestly, that's kind of impressive. Oh, and Shadow gets a run on... Kalula gets around on Shadow as Shadow drops a tire into the dirt there. Now, it does seem like Shadow and Kalula have the sense now to not go side by side in the same section, but look at that. That little hiccup there now brings Manuel Pedro and Mays back into the frame. They're side by side, Pedro and Mays are, and Mays clips Pedro out of the final corner. So the soft tires are doing some good for Mays right now. Now he's still going to be dealing with some significant tire fall off on the very last lap or so, but so is everyone else on their worn out mediums. Now with how rubbered in the track is going to be on the last lap, the tire fall off may not be as extreme. So now Mays looking forward to Shadow and Kalula. But again, we do not know what Mays' tire life is going to look like. He is at 30% right now. I think he could be in the 65% range or so. But might still have something for this duo, Shadow and Kalula. Railgun is scooting away finally in second spot. So third, fourth, fifth, and sixth all on top of each other now. And then Manuel Pedro way back there in sixth, and then way farther back, about 15 seconds out of this group, is Carl Matthews. Well, he's got good time penalty counts. It's not going to be good enough for him to get ahead of either Pedro or Kalula by the looks of it. Frustrating for Matthews. If he just showed up for qualifying, you have to wonder how much different his race would be going. Still a respectable drive, though, from 20th to 7th. And now Mays is starting to really harass Kalula here. Gets right behind that Aston. You don't want to make the move in turn one if you can help it. The curbs are just too aggressive. But a good run through turn one should open up a move, a dive, going to turn two. Looks like Shadow didn't have a good run in turn one either, so that brings Kalula back into the fray for third. And Mays has draft on both of them on softer tires, but again, the longer he waits, the less time he has, and the less good those softs are going to be. Mays needs to make his moves fast, not, bleeding edge, make every silly move on track fast, but he needs to be respectably fast. No change amongst them this time, though. Mays still not really pushing the issue. Now, we do know out of these drivers, Mays is best when it comes to time penalties right now. But he has to worry about tire fall off. I would not want to really worry about tire fall off. He also has Manuel Pedro behind him. Reminder, Pedro got into the rear of that Chevy earlier and spun him out in the hairpin about a dozen or so laps ago. So if I was Mays, I wouldn't want to have to deal with that again either. Mays is pressuring Kalula, but does not seem to be really forcing his nose into corners that doesn't belong. My guess is that Mays feels really confident with the tires and believes that time penalties will give him second. But I don't think so. I think he needs to get out there and get the elbows out and start making these moves if he can. Is 2 laps left right now for these drivers. Dex Twilight leads by an absurd margin right now over Les Railgun. Here comes the move. Finally, Mays out of turn number 1, side by side with Kalula, gets the nose ahead. He should be able to have a nice, respectable line here. A little bit divey through turn 2, but he had the traction on exit. That's what matters. Now he'll be looking at NDL Shadow there in third, just ahead of him. We look at Mays' tires. He is at 45% on his tires right now. I look at NDL Shadow's tires, and that Dodge, he's at 50%. So right now, Mays still has a tire advantage, it seems, over Shadow. Now, that tire advantage will probably equalize out completely by the end of this lap, but still, Mays has gotten himself to third, and on time penalties, that should, I believe, be enough. Yeah, Mays is fourth, Shadow is third, but Shadow is now at 10 seconds of time penalties. Mays only has 4.6. So he doesn't have to pass Shadow for this podium, but if he does, obviously, I imagine it would help. Through stadium section for the second to last time. Shadow just trying to bring home third, but it's all going to come down to how bad the fall off is and if Mays makes any silly, stupid moves or not. Oh, there's a little bit of contact. The Dodge drifting the rear end wide. He's got an awful line coming out of the final corner. Mays going to get to his inside. Side by side. American versus American machine as they dive down to turn 1 for the final corner. And Maze gets by Shadow. They both are wide, and Shadow nearly gets ran to from behind by Tallulah. And there's Manuel Pedro in the mix as well. Pedro pulls up alongside Tallulah. He goes deep, nearly gets in the rear of that dodge. Maze has gotten in the third, and he's starting to scoot away. I think the tires have gotten a little bit too bad for Shadow, but the thing is, Tallulah and Pedro are now in their own little death fight here for 5th and 6th. They're still both about 16 seconds ahead of the driver in 7th right now, who's little kid Suave, who's actually gotten that position ahead of Matthews somehow. I missed that development. So between these three, Shadow, Tallulah, and Pedro, Shadow's the best when it comes to time penalties, then Pedro, then Tallulah. So Tallulah on time penalties might just drop out of the top 5 anyway. And Maze has had a wild day. Started near the front, been fighting basically all day long, jumped on an alternate strategy, got spun out at one point, but it looks like despite that, he is going to recover for a 3rd. Les Railgun is going to recover from going off track on his own from 2nd, and now the final quarter, going from pole to a spin out lap 1, turn 1, to the checkered flag. Dex Twilight is your winner tonight at Hockenheim. Les Railgun also has a fantastic rebound day today, and Railgun, your defending series champion, will start off his title defense with a 2nd place finish in tonight's race. And 3rd place will be It's Maze, showing that he is not to be counted out in the championship. He also recovers from a mid-race spin. He will come home 3rd at Hockenheim. And the fight for 4th, 5th, and 6th will go Shadow, then off penalties will be Pedro, then Tallulah. And it looks like the fight for 7th and 8th between Suave and Car Matthews, with Wiser just a little bit farther back. This position, I think, is going to go to Matthews off of time penalties. No, it's Suave. Suave had good enough penalties, so he stays ahead of Matthews, and they both stay ahead of Wiza. And then 10th will go to Tempered Ship. All right, and that is your top 10 at the end of that race. A very interesting race, and most impressively to me, green flag, green, no yellows, from the start to the end, despite having a lot of issues throughout the entire day today. And only 2 drivers go a lap down by the end of the race. Yellow and Clinical, just awful time, 5 laps down. Capsule Healer, 1 lap down near the end of the event. We're going to take a Twitch mandated ad break, and when we come back, we'll try to talk with some of our top 5 finishers here at Hockenheim. All right. Maze, can you hear me?
I got you.
All right. Pedro, can you hear me? Pedro, can you hear me? All right, he may still be in...
He's back in party chat now. He's back in party chat.
Pedro, can you hear me? Yes, okay. Well, I'll start off with Maze here, but ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Hockenheim. Our first race of X League's GT3 Pro season is over. While your winner is Dex Twilight, we are going to talk with It's Maze. Maze, we talked to you last night. Now we talk to you again tonight. I said, hey, it would be nice after tomorrow night's race to go ahead and compare and contrast how the strategies played out. Well, how do you feel it played out now?
Yeah, I mean, I essentially did the same thing, medium, soft. But I think what I've learned is the PCS cars don't wear the tires as much by a smidge, so it was a bit more of a struggle. But it still worked out okay. I did the mediums first, so it's two stints of 14, and with the pace lap, it's kind of like a 13 and a half, 13 and a quarter. As far as the tire wear goes. So that second stint, that last lap was a little gruesome, but it was all worth it to get on the softs. I made up a lot of time doing that, even in just those 8 laps. So yeah, a pretty good race overall. I had a lot of fun battling with Railgun and a few other people. Shadow. Noticed that there was a bunch of people getting penalties like crazy, and it's really difficult not to, especially T1. But other than getting rear-ended by someone, I don't know what happened. Somebody was late on the brakes or locked up and just kind of took me out, and I lost 8 seconds, so there went my chance to capitalize on Railgun or fight it out to the end. But overall, happy with third for sure.
Well, I got bad news for you. The person who hit you there was the other person in the party right now. It was Manuel Pedro, who locked up under brakes and ended up hitting you in that incident.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. I made mistakes too. I made a mistake and went a little too deep and kind of caused a little bit of a ruckus. Not maybe as much as what happened to me, but I just gave them both the positions back instantly and tried to make it right. But yeah, I mean, shit happens, man. It is what it is. We'll just go on next week.
All right. Win last night, a podium result today. This is a pretty good way to start out your championship run, but you're still behind Les Railgun like you were most of the season last year. Do you think there's anything different you can do to fight against Railgun over the course of the season for the championship?
I mean, I definitely feel more confident in the balance we have with the cars this go around. I think I could have given Railgun a little bit of a run for his money if I didn't get had the little incident there with what happened. But you know, who knows? We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
All right, fair point. And one more thing before you go. You enter a relatively elite club for X League of drivers who have led laps in both the Porsche Cup race and the GT3 Pro race over the same weekend. So good job on that as well.
Hey, thank you. That's awesome. Glad somebody's keeping track.
All right, now I want to see one more time. Pedro, do you have a mic that you can talk with?
Hello.
Hello, Pedro. What do you want to say about your race?
It's one mid race. Not as good, but not as bad. My race is some pace. No, the strategy is the same of the P1. Mediums on 2 box. And instead, pace is the key of my race.
Well, your pace is not that bad. In fact, I would say your pace is pretty good. You went from 9th to 5th today, so that's pretty darn solid. Also, in the Ferrari, how do you feel the Ferrari handles this year compared to last year?
It's better, but not is the best top 3 cars. It's the top 4, top 5, but not as bad.
All right. Anything else you want to say about a very interesting race for you tonight?
What?
Anything else you want to say?
I don't speak English, but I don't fuck.
Portuguese?
He knows that
word. One second.
Oh yes, thanks.
I'm gonna try this. Please forgive me, but I'm trying to repeat off of Google Translate. Mais alguma coisa que você queira dizer em português?
That was a good effort.
I understand.
Oh, hey, there we go.
I don't understand.
Oh,
Sorry.
he doesn't
Okay.
understand. Oh, it's okay. It's all right. He's fine. It's good.
Sorry.
Good race. No, yeah.
In the
Well,
chat of Twitch, your Twitch,
Here, let me...
the question.
Yeah. 1 second, let me check my Twitch then real quick. For some reason, Twitch hasn't been properly updating my chats recently, so let me see here.
All right. While you guys are doing that, I'm gonna dip. GG's. Take it
All
easy.
right. Noel said their mic is bugged on Xbox group. Sorry about English. It's bad. It's okay.
It's that? You have any way to say? Oh, okay. Google Translate to help. Okay. My opponent's mistakes and help him a lot in the race. It's every. I am go. Thanks,
Okay.
Insane. Good
Yeah,
night.
thank you, Manuel, and have a good night. All right. And with that in mind, that'll pretty much wrap up our broadcast for tonight's race. Sadly, we're not able to get any word from Twilight, Railgun, or Shadow. Don't know what was up with Twilight, but both Railgun and Shadow were having mic issues. But I do want to say one more time, Twilight, fantastic run from pole to spinning out and falling dead. Last lap, turn 1, to taking the lead back at the end of lap 9 and walking off to a massive lead. The fight for second and third, fourth, fifth, all interesting all the way to the end here. So congratulations to all of our drivers involved in tonight's race. And for those of you who want more racing action, don't you worry. Tomorrow night, we will be starting the first race of FEC's Summer IndyCar Series. That was a staple of this channel last season, and will be coming back this season as well. But if you want more GT3 stuff, don't worry. On Friday night, we will be back with the Porsche Cup again. On Saturday night, we will be back with X League's GT3. That's going to be our schedule for the next 2 or 3 months here. It will be Porsche Cup on Friday night for X League, GT3 Pro for X League on Saturday nights, and then FEC IndyCar on Sunday nights. But until then, I've been your host for today's broadcast, Insane Leader 13. Thank you everyone for joining us. Farewell and goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.